I am shocked at the amount of waste in my day and in my life. It's like that classic 80-20. 80% of the crap that I do, I shouldn't be doing, and I need to get myself out of. And even there are some team members that I have that they are really good about forcing me out. They're like, you're in the Slack channel, you're communicating with these people doing this thing, get out, we're kicking you out of the channel. and everything is better because of it. So,
are you ready to become the dad you were meant to be? Good, because this is the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast, where imperfect actions are better than perfect ideas, promises kept are more important than promises made, and nothing happens unless you make it happen. My name is Drew, father of three, the founder of the Epic Dad Company. My mission is to help dads up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and men they're called to be. We need epic dads now more than ever. And it is your responsibility and obligation to become the best father you can be and show your kids what is possible. Listen in for weekly tips, strategies, and actions you can take to go from average dad to epic dad. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the episode. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast. This is your host, Drew Camp, here, the founder of the Epic Dad Company. And I want to say thank you for joining the show. Hey, if this is your first time listening to the show, my mission with this podcast and the Epic Dad Company is really clear, really simple. It is to change the culture by creating more epic dads and to help you level up as a husband, father, and man, because our culture desperately needs for fathers to step up and lead. I hope that you agree with that. I hope you buy into our message, and I hope you get value from our message. Hey, guys, I want to give a quick update before we jump into an awesome interview today with my pal, Jordo Mederic. So the Epic Dad Company, if you guys are following along, we have a product launch coming up soon. So we have our one pre-workout that we launched in March of last year that has grown tremendously thanks to your help. And now, if you're listening live, we have got a product launch on Thursday, February 1st, 2024 for our first protein. So you guys have been asking us for months and months now to come out with a post-workout. And so we are delivering on that, and we are delivering in a big way with our Paleo Post. Now, Paleo Post is a little bit different than some of the proteins that you have seen out there, but we are a little bit different of a supplement company. So our mission, again, is much broader. It's not just to launch a billion supplements. It is to help you level up, right? And so everything that we release is going to fall in line with trying to solve a problem for dads. And so our protein is no different. So the problem that we are trying to solve for you, dad, is that you need a good post-workout shake, but you need something that is tailored specifically to you as a dad. So Paleo Post is a beef isolate protein, a beef bone broth protein. And that's a little bit different than a traditional whey option. And there are several reasons that we decided to go with a beef protein. But one of the biggest ones is that beef protein contains collagen, as opposed to whey that does not. And so us as dads, we are getting a little bit older, right? Probably most of you are in your 30s and 40s, heck, maybe 50s. And our joints and our ligaments, our cartilage is starting to break down, right? And so we need to repair that. And so Paleo Post is equipped with collagen as well, which is not only going to help you build lean muscle mass, but it's also going to help repair and build those ligaments, joints, and cartilage. And so we launched Paleo Post officially this Thursday, if you're listening live. And so be on the lookout for the launch. We are super excited to bring this product to market, guys. Okay, with that out of the way, let's jump into today's episode. We have got on my good pal, Jordo. So Jordo is a husband, a father, and a business owner. Jordo is the founder of a company called Drop Funnels, which is an all-in-one marketing solution to get you online with a website in minutes. And I met Jordo, oh gosh, it's probably been about 2.5 years ago now at a marketing event, and was just blown away with his message, his approach, not only to entrepreneurship, but to family as well. And so I wanted to have a discussion with Jordo today because his approach to balancing entrepreneurship and fatherhood is one that I agree with. And I was curious as to how he can find that balance. All of us, whether you are a business owner or not, are looking for some type of freedom and flexibility so that we can be with our families as much as possible. And yet we also have this other side of us that wants to achieve and wants to excel in the workplace. And finding the balance between these two is usually a messy business. And today, Jordo and I talk about his journey to becoming an entrepreneur as a father, some of the lessons he has learned along the way, and how we can strike that balance between being a high performer and a great father. And guys, this was such a fun conversation. Jordo and I covered the gamut of topics, everything from, why folks get into entrepreneurship, a little bit on the business tactical side, a little bit on the leadership side, a little bit on the fatherhood side, a little bit on homeschooling. We cover the gamut. And so I think you guys are going to love this conversation with Jordo. So break out your notebook, break out your pen, and let's hop into the episode.
Let's
Yeah. So Jordo, welcome to the show, man. um,
We're having a whole conversation.
I know,
We haven't
I
even
know.
recorded.
Yeah, I mean, it was just. I mean, we're gonna obviously get into it, but I mean, just such like that's where I want the podcast to go. Like exactly what we're talking about right before I press record. So I'm just gonna press record, man, and let's dive into it. Is that cool?
I love it.
All right, awesome. So Jordo, tell folks that don't know you a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Jordan Mederick. Most of my friends call me Jordo. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the founder of dropfunnels.com, which is a sales funnel platform that's built on WordPress. It's built for speed. And also we have some incredible support. So that's kind of our corner of the market. I also do some consulting with brands for scaling the marketing efforts and increasing their overall acquisition strategy. But I'm also a family of 4. So I've got 3 boys and a girl. They're all under 8. So it's a chaotic circus of a house that we live in here. But even with this and, running a sizable organization and a family at the same time is certainly busy, but I'm still finding that balance between the two for sure.
Yeah, that's where I want the discussion to go, and we'll get there. Is just around balance, right? But I want to talk a little bit about like the business side first, because that's just super interesting to me, right? Like obviously I'm am an entrepreneur trying to grow a business, and a lot of the guys that listen, I'm sure, are as well, or they're in an organization, where they're trying to grow their career. Like what is it about what you're doing now that kind of drew you to that? Because it seems like from our conversations, right, you're very passionate about what you do. And a lot of guys aren't, they're showing up 9 to 5, just kind of getting a paycheck and
Yeah.
dying on the inside, wanting to do something, so
Yeah.
tell me about that journey.
Well, the dichotomy between the entrepreneurial or entrepreneurship desire versus the provision desire, they're often at odds, right? So like we want to provide for our families. We want to make sure that they're financially sound. So we say, what is our human brain, our lizard brain is always firing. How do we survive, right? How do we expend the least amount of energy for the greatest possible outcome? And so really what a job represents, and I think most guys on here would agree, it is a safety net, right? It is it's a guarantee that, hey, the creditors aren't going to come knock on the door. But it's also less of a guarantee versus controlling your own destiny. So when you realize it's kind of a moment of panic, I think, for most people, because I think both of us are probably, I know I am, the first in the lineage of my genealogy that's an entrepreneur. First one. I mean, everyone else was like in the trades, military, like they're doing kind of the traditional route of college, get a job, go do that kind of thing. My dad's a pastor. So, I mean, there was no entrepreneurial upbringing by any stretch, but it was planted in me at a very young age that like, if I ever wanted to go do something that others couldn't do, or I wanted to have more control and freedom. And we had a huge family. So I always kind of felt like, man, I think large families, their kids, it's kind of a victim mentality. We feel like we don't have enough. And so what do I do? How do I hustle to go get more of what I want? And so I really became an entrepreneur at a fairly young age. But I think for most men, it comes down to a moment of panic, realizing that a job is not safe. That like the 9 to 5 is a 50-50 chance every day that you lose your income every single day. By controlling it, you are embracing a tremendous amount of potential risk, but it's no riskier than having a job.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
either going to work or it's not going to work, you know?
right. It's a 50-50. So like, do you want the upside if it does,
Mhm.
you know? So it's like asymmetric upside. So yeah, I think for most dads who might be in that position of saying like, hey, I've got a 9 to 5 job, I want to break away. It's like you got to run like a gazelle from a lion from that
Mhm.
and say like, I'm not going to wait 2 years to go get this thing going. No, I'm going to get it done now, even if that means nights, weekends, whatever it takes
Mhm.
to get it off the ground. But to do that wisely, right? So you're not
Mhm.
sacrificing your family's safety to do so. Work your day job, but like run from it as much
Mhm.
as you possibly can if you have that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that people are born entrepreneurs, or do you think that they can kind
Mm.
of, manifest that later in life just based off of experience?
I've got an ugly opinion about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I don't suggest to people if they're like they're working a job and and they just want to go make more money. I no longer I used to suggest that you should become an entrepreneur, start your own business, launch your own products, go do your own thing. I do not recommend that to anyone anymore. I think Hormozy said it best, and like, some things he says I'm not on board with, but other things I think are genius. And one of
Mhm.
them was he said entrepreneurship is kind of like getting kicked in the nuts every single day, repeatedly, multiple times a day, and then waking up the next day and saying, "Okay, let's do it again."
Yeah.
That's
Isn't that the truth, man?
exactly what it feels like. And there are just like these fleeting 1% moments of joy and happiness and fulfillment. Like you're being successful. You just closed a deal. It's like that's the 1% fleeting moment, but 99% of it was complete crap and getting kicked in the nuts over and over. So yes, I think entrepreneurship is embedded in our DNA, either from a vision perspective, a purpose perspective, or even I think there's a healthy amount of fear that can probably drive you into that. But I think it is significantly harder for someone who does not have that entrepreneurial gene in them
Mhm.
to turn them into that. It's
Mhm.
1,000 times harder because they're so risk adverse. And like to be an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, you are embracing the suck every single day.
Mhm.
And that does not bode well for people who don't have that. So yeah, I think you're born with it, and I think there's just the rarest people who could transition the mindset from one to the
Yeah.
other.
I mean, for me, it's that, man. I was born with it, right? It's just there's this thing that's in my mind that like I just can't get rid of, right? That I have to do it. And I'll kind of put it this way. I think Hormozy, like I said, or like you said, is he says a lot of things that I totally agree with. Some things that I don't, which is great. You shouldn't, agree with somebody 100%. But yeah, I mean, another analogy would be like, hey, imagine you're playing baseball, right? And 99 times you strike out, but then one time you hit a grand slam. It's like that's what
Mhm.
it's going to be like. It's like you have to just deal with constant pressure, stress, failure, and then like you get one little win, right, to keep you going. And heck, you might even keep going if you just continue to fail too, right? If you have that gene. But for me though, I think getting into business for myself is really like not. I mean, there is a financial aspect to it, obviously, right? But it's really the freedom aspect. Of hey, I want to be able to make the decisions that I want to make, right? Not be tied to any corporation that may not have the same values that I do. Be able to make decisions around my family and our time that I want to. But I think what ultimately ends up happening on every journey at some point in time is you get into it for that freedom, but then you find out pretty quickly that like, holy shit, I have to work a lot harder than I did when I just had a 9 to 5 job.
Mhm.
And so that freedom that you were after all of a sudden becomes, not a prison, right? Because you enjoy what you're doing, but it's taking away from the family when all you really wanted to do was to allow for more time for the family, you know?
Mm. Mhm. Boy, there's so many pieces in that between identity, choice, purpose, vision, a lot to unpack. But man, I'll tell you the freedom. I think there's the conversation between leading and lagging indicators, right? There's like the
Mm-hmm.
what you put into it versus what you get out of it. And if we're chasing those lagging indicators all the time, the freedom, like I want to be free, be free, be free, we're going to be constantly looking for evidence and excuses and reasons not to do things on the leading indicator side that could actually inevitably fuel that freedom, right? But it's almost like it's the same as hating a job, right? Is to say like, hey, I've got this business, but I don't want to work in it because it keeps me from having kind of my freedom. And I think freedom is just differently defined, especially for entrepreneurs. For me, it is not about um, boy, I feel very free as an entrepreneur. So I don't want to project too much on other people, but the fact that I don't ask anyone for permission to do anything, period,
Mhm.
is one of the most freeing feelings on earth. I think that's freedom. I think what people generally, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're just kind of starting out, your idea of freedom is making a ton of money and getting to go on vacations and do all these things. But you're going to learn pretty quickly that that's not what feels free, right? You're going to, sure, if you haven't had a vacation in 4 years because you've been working a job, and you can actually go and splurge on yourself. Sure, there's that 1% of leading in or lagging indicator of freedom
Mm.
that you're going to experience. Um, but boy, I think defining what freedom actually looks like for you that is not necessarily tied to a monetary
Mhm.
goal, sure, have financial goals, sure, like invest in stuff, like all those things, right? But to define what freedom looks like for you, for me, it's that after this podcast, I'm going to go probably hang out with my family for the rest of the night. I've only worked a half day and I'm not going to ask anyone's permission about it, right?
Mhm.
And so much to the point where like I'll tell my team like I'm going to go do this so that they know like if I'm not responding asynchronously, what's happening, right? But they don't argue with me. They don't tell me what to do. They never say, no, you need to be here at this time and do this thing. That's to me is freedom, is like that freedom of choice that is completely outside of the veil of financial gain. Like you need to get yourself covered, right? I think every entrepreneur, you need to establish as soon as possible between $20,000 to $30,000 in take home pay. All right. Cause like that right there, they've done tremendous amounts of studies on like that's about how much happiness you're going to get as
Mhm.
it relates to money. Like you're not going to be exponentially happier at 50,000 as you would with 30. Yeah, you can buy some cool new toys and whatnot, but for most places in the United States, like 20, 30 grand take home after team taxes, all those things are paid. It's like you now have your freedom. You have
Mm.
your freedom of choice to go do, and you can go multiply that wealth,
Mhm.
like, and, or, invest that time into your family and build a legacy that way.
Mm. Yeah, I think there is that happiness threshold, right? Of, you kind of go after these materialistic things, and like we probably all been there, right? Of we go buy the shiny thing because we think it's gonna make us happy, right? And
Yeah.
it's cool for like a day, and then you're like, all right, whatever, it
Dude,
just becomes
I
part,
bought an
yeah, it's just
RV.
normal.
Like my wife wanted to go travel, so like I bought this brand new RV, and we went out and took. And dude, it is nothing but like day one was super exciting. Every time we took it out, stuff broke, maintenance, cost, time, headache. I was like, dude, I'm gonna flash sale the crap out of this thing and get it out of my life. And I couldn't be happier that it's gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the tale as old as time.
Yeah, well, you mentioned something else too, right? Of you're kind of in these situations, and you have to define for yourself kind of what freedom looks like, and that it kind of brings to mind a topic that I honestly just published a podcast today about it, is kind of changing your mindset from a what is it, a have do be mindset to a be do have mindset. And that this is something that I have struggled with for so long and still do, but been doing a lot of work around this, and it's really to adopt the mindset of someone that is grateful, right? That is fulfilled, that finds purpose in what they're doing, and because you have that, now you're going to act in alignment with the person that has those things. And then ultimately you're going to get the result you want, right? As opposed to what most of us do is we say, I have to have the thing first, and
Mm,
then I will be fulfilled, I will find purpose, and then, and so we've got it backwards. And it's something I have to remind myself of, I mean, constantly, right? Is because if you are an entrepreneur, and even if you're not, if you're a high performer, you want to go achieve things, like we have this really bad habit of, finding that success and then just immediately, like we just talked about, right? The shiny object, you go buy it,
mm,
you go purchase it, it gives you fulfillment for about a day. And then you're like, oh, what's missing inside of me? I feel empty again. So
mm,
it's like you have to shift the way you think about it, as to, I need to be that type of person,
mm,
right? And then I will ultimately have the type of things that person has.
mm. Yeah. If you, for example, you're saying like, hey, um, I want to have 20 to $30,000 a month in completely passive investment income coming to me through dividends or whatever that is, or real
Hmm.
estate or whatever. Like you don't start having that to then go out and do the things that that person does.
Exactly.
Seth Ellsworth, I think, explains this in the best way possible, and I'm going to butcher it, but I think he does it super well. It's this concept of like you need to make a choice-based identity that you are going to choose to be. I am an investor. I am a real estate professional. I am an entrepreneur, and then to make identity-based choices
Mm-hmm.
from that. So what does that type of person do? An investor invests.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurial person builds business. A good father is supportive and loving, firm, but ultimately an identity giver to your kids. So yeah, that concept of being the person first is the only way to get there, right? You don't, and I see that being held up for a lot of people who are like, hey, I want to be a social media influencer, but I don't have any following. It's okay. Well, duh, because you're not,
Yeah.
duh. Of course you don't have it. How do you get that outcome that you wanted? Well, you go
You
and
become a
be
social media
influential.
influencer. Yeah.
Go influence somebody and start with one person. It's like, I think one of the most meaningful things that someone that a kind of a mentor type figure once said to me is like, if you're unwilling to show up for one person, you're not going to show up for 1,000. So each new customer that you impact, whether they're paying you or not, they can still be a customer to you, right? That the impact you make to one person can be multiplied, but you have to be willing to show up for that one. So imagine like if you take the influencer route, if you have one follower, how are you providing content to that one follower who's saying, yes, I like your stuff? I
Yeah.
I suck at social media. I'll tell you, I do not have a lot of followers and have not engaged in a lot of social media content in that way outside of just Facebook posts and that kind of thing. But I'm also like, hey, if I want 400,000 subscribers instead of 4,000 or whatever, like how am I treating those people now? Because that's what's going to echo and grow and expound things, which eventually turns you into getting so I'm being the person first, then getting what that person gets.
Yeah, I love this idea around identity. So we have inside the company, the Epic Dad company, we have what we call the Epic Dad framework. And so we put it together over 2 years of just having conversations with dads, understanding their challenges, my personal challenges going through, right, and going through other mentorship programs. We've developed this kind of framework, and identity is the first pillar. Identity and values is the first pillar, right? And so I think it's super important to have that foundation because when you don't ultimately know who you are, right, you're going to make choices that are not in alignment with that because we're busy, right? We're dads, we got families, we got jobs, we businesses that we're running. We're super busy, and it's really easy to make the wrong decisions when you're not connecting with that identity and like reinforcing that. So like that's the first pillar for us is identity, and what we do is one of the other pillars is accountability. And we're kind of a fitness company, right? And we talk about workouts and stuff all the time and accountability around workouts. But like ultimately, what you should be holding yourself accountable to is not did I do that workout, right? It's
Mm,
not. It should be did I live in alignment with my identity, right? Because my identity says that I am the type of person that does his workouts,
mm,
right? And so
mm.
you hold yourself accountable to that identity as opposed to the individual actions, and that's going to force you to show up in a way that you need to, so because you're focusing on identity and not outcome, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Boy, that's powerful stuff right there. Even over the last, as far as accountability is concerned, um, I'm the founder and CEO of a company that's doing okay, and even today, a mentor type person encouraged me to do a time audit on all the things that I do on a
Mm.
daily basis. And dude, I am shocked. I've only been doing it like 2 days.
I'm scared to do one.
Oh, it's terrifying. Well, first of all, being like knowing that someone's going to see it and like, not that they're going to judge it because they probably won't. You're going to be more judgmental than anyone else could be, right? But I am shocked at the amount of waste in my day and in my life. It's like that classic 80/20. 80% of the crap that I do, I shouldn't be doing and I need to get myself out of. And even there are some team members that I have that they are really good about forcing me out. They're like, you're in the Slack channel, you're communicating with these people doing this thing, get out, we're kicking you out of the channel. And everything is better because of that. Like, so it's like I'm intruding into non-movers, consistently and seeing that like, man, that's ops. That's marketing. That's fulfillment. That's support. I have people for that. Why am I doing any of these things? So I would recommend if anyone wants a swift additional kick to the nuts, then go ahead and do a time audit on yourself for at least 3 days. If you can go up to 7, awesome. But hour by hour, what did you do? Not what did you achieve? What did you do? Because it's going to inform what you believe about yourself, right? And it has started to stir up some pieces in me that, like, man, there are some things I've not healed from that have made me attach some of my activity to an identity that I don't even want. Right? It's like I don't want to be the person that if someone randomly does a big chargeback or something stupid, right? I'm like, that I shouldn't even know about that, right? Like someone else should be handling that, because I am not a support representative. I am not a financial analyst. I'm not an accountant. My job is to ignore the things and not do the things that don't move the needle, and instead focus on the 20%. So it has been an enlightening experience, to say the least.
Yeah. How do you conduct that time audit? Do you like every 30 minutes? What am I doing or something like that?
Well, so what I'm doing is I just have a Google sheet, use Excel or whatever. And I literally I could pull it up here. I've got 4 columns. So, date, right? Date, next column is time. So I just go hour by hour, 9 to 10. What did I do during that time? Activity and value. So date, time, activity, and value. And at the end of the day, you can assign a value to each one of those things that you did. And it's like, if that is a $1, put little dollar signs on there, right? Like, what is that worth as far as growth or impact to anyone? Put a $1 sign next to the things that you shouldn't even be thinking about. Let me give you an example, because I'm all about transparency, and let me come up.
Yeah, let's see what Jordo's day looks
Oh
like.
yeah, okay. So we could really here's today from 9 to 10. For everyone listening, think about the things that, like, I shouldn't be doing here, but I'm being fully transparent, and this is what I actually did. 9 to 10 in the morning, I'll have family time and whatnot. So I usually start right around 9. From 9 to 10, I approve payroll. I was reviewing software cost sheets, like what is our current monthly subscriptions for softwares, and being awfully judgmental about ones that we should cut. Replacing, we had our credit card. Anyways, we had to get new credit cards, replacing those on all of those subscriptions. So logging in to all these pieces. Okay. And then I signed a mastermind agreement that, okay, so that was a full hour. I'll just cover the second hour too, just so everyone knows how bad this is. What of that entire hour should have been involved? Maybe approving payroll. That took 5 minutes. Not even, it took 60 seconds. What am I doing? Not 10 to 11. I had a call with GoDaddy on a domain for like this new project, which is a visionary task, right? So like that concept is, that's worth doing, because it's like, hey, the brand actually does matter as far as the vision is related. Slack discussions about decisions that we need to make with leadership. I went into my wife's DropFunnels account. She has a blog that's on DropFunnels, and she was getting all these spam comments. Sometimes people spam your blog with stupid comments about erectile dysfunction or something. And I went and signed up for a Kismet to go like turn off commenting on her blog. It probably took me 10 minutes, and it could have taken a support person less time and me not be involved in that at all. Check some dev things for updates, realize nothing's being done. So I know I got to go chase some of those things down. So 80% of that, there's probably 2 of those during those 2 hours, 2 things I should have been doing and focusing on, and instead dedicating time to nonsense, just pure nonsense. So
Yeah.
if anyone wants to circumvent the fear of the judgment that you might feel by doing this, just know that your to-do list is probably significantly better than what I just read to you.
Yeah, it goes back to that identity piece too, right? Of like, okay, cool, I am the CEO of a well-performing business and founder of the business. I should be doing the things that the CEO and founder does, right? And so, which is the exact thing you're going through now, right? Of auditing the time and saying, okay, cool, if this is my identity, this is who I am. I need to align my actions with that,
Right. Yeah. And I think at being a pastor's kid too, I struggle with this concept of doing that and saying, no, there's only certain things I'm going to do versus servant leadership, right? Which is, and boy, that's a tough line too, because like my perspective has always been, I'm going to show up for one person, no matter who that person is. If I have one new customer come in, they need something from me, I'm going to provide that, right? The other side of the coin is, no, you need to empower other people to do that. And I'm sure the people who are also CEOs are screaming on one side of the fence or the other, right? Like, I'm willing to show up for, it's been one of my principles is to show up for one person. But also that there's nothing in the business that I'm unwilling to do, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
because how can I expect anyone else to do a task that I'm not willing to do? So,
Hmm.
boy, that is a delicate balance there. And supporting people through learning and adopting the tasks that need to not be on your plate is probably a great way to demonstrate servant leadership. But I think you don't need to actually spend the time doing those tasks tactically. You need to be willing to do it and willing to walk someone else through it so they can be successful as well.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes. I mean, it goes way deeper than just entrepreneurship, right? I think when you're talking about any type of activity where you are a leader, and I'm sure a lot of listeners here are leaders, right? It could be in your organization at work, could be your organization at church, whatever. Like you have to understand what is your role as the leader. And servant leadership is absolutely a big part of that. And I'll kind of go back to my military career on this. So on active duty, I was enlisted. And so I was kind of working up the ranks there and got put in a team leader, squad leader role. And that's a different role, right? You're now a leader of people than of you just being an individual contributor. And one of the things that I would do that would piss my supervisors off would be I would get in the trenches, right, and like get to work with the guys. And I got pulled aside a number of times, right? Of it says, hey, you don't need to be doing that type of work, right? Like that's what you have guys for, and so I think that there is a balance there, and what you're talking about, right, is that there is that servant leadership of showing that I am not going to ask you to do anything that I am not willing to do myself. But then there's also, we have to drive the ball forward as the visionary leader of an organization and like understand that our role is to ultimately craft the vision for where we're going, right? And then make sure that we're communicating that down so it has mass adoption and we can empower those people to make those decisions. So it's a tough needle to thread, because you want to be on both sides of it.
Yeah, the visionary aspect of clearly communicating a vision to your team, that is your job as CEO, right? And to keep cash in your bank.
Yeah, make sure you don't
It's
run out of
that.
money.
But it doesn't mean you're necessarily doing sales calls. I enjoy doing sales calls, so I'm fine with it. And if that does move the needle at whatever stage you're at, great.
Mhm.
Especially if they're very high value, new clientele and growth in the company. That is your ultimate responsibility: is money in the bank and communicating vision to your team. But I'm very much leaning into, because my dad being a pastor of kind of a small church, more specifically, like he painted the walls, he
Mhm.
helped build the building, he was nailing studs. And so I took that example, and I think that there's a lot of power in that, especially in like a church space where a lot of people are volunteers, right?
Mhm.
When you're
Yeah.
paying someone, it's a different perspective. They are getting money to achieve their own goals by helping you to fulfill a vision. So them
Mhm.
adhering to that and even kicking you out of things that you shouldn't be doing if you happen to fall. Like if one of your guys in the trenches, they're like, nope, get out. This isn't your job. We got this handled. Like
Yeah.
that is the greatest gift I think a leader can be given, is someone on their team saying, get out of the trench. Give me the
Yeah.
shovel. We have this handled. Go away.
Yeah.
I think that is a gift.
Yeah, no, and that's something that as I am starting to bring on new resources to the business. Like I said, I just kind of jumped in full time in January, right? So I'm doing most of it still. I'm doing the pick and shovel work myself, but am starting to delegate some of those tasks out. That's going to be a challenge for me, because it's my baby, right? I want to make sure everything's perfect, but at the end of the day, like the reason I'm hiring someone is probably because they're better at it than I am,
Mm.
right? And so I need to allow them to do their job, and not get in the way. And that's something I struggle with, a lot too. But Jordan, I want to transition a little bit more towards family life. I kind of wanted to pre-frame all this business conversation to get to family, because obviously, like you have a high-performing business, you've got a team, right? You've got a lot of responsibilities, but yet, you said, hey, the ultimate goal for me is to, be able to make my own decisions, right? And so how are you balancing the need for, I feel like I need to be at work all the time,
Mm.
right? To make sure that that is on course and I've got the vision crafted, the team is excelling, and that's constantly on your brain, I'm sure, versus feeling the need that, hey, when I'm at work, I might feel guilty because
Mm.
I need to be with my family and kind of vice versa, right? And I think, a lot of people call it dad guilt. That like, hey, when I'm with my family, I feel like I should be working. When I'm working, I feel like I should be with my family. So As an entrepreneur, how have you handled that? And do you still run into that?
Yeah, every day. Every
Yeah.
time when I'm working in the business, especially if it's like for extended periods or like work trips or whatever, I'm like, what am I doing? I should be with my family. Like primarily based on the, I guess, call it theology that I don't want to be at the end of my life and regret any part of my fatherhood journey, right? Any part of that. And sitting here today, I believe that at the end of when I'm 80 years old or 90 years old, or who knows, maybe we'll all live to 150, with medical advancements or something, whenever that is. And I don't think I'm going to have a lot of regrets up to this point. It doesn't mean I'm perfect by any stretch, but I know that being an entrepreneur empowers me to spend more time with them than probably any one of their friends' dads are able to spend time with them.
Mm.
We also homeschool. That's a big part of our journey. And I actually still run the company from home. So I've got a wing of the house that's my office space, which we're in right now. And after this, I can go have lunch with them and or take them to the park or do whatever it is that I think helps to fill some of that bucket. But yeah, it's actually less of an issue for me, like when I'm working to feel like I should be with family than the other way around. I feel like when I'm with family, I'm like, oh, how's the business going? I'm checking in on Slack on my phone and
Mm.
like, hey guys, do we get this thing done? Or like, how's this thing going? Or whatever. And so I think that that's both a balance and a cost that you embrace, right? Is that we want to be present with our kids. We want to be good dads, but you also ensuring that the financial aspect of your life is happening, even if it means you pull out your phone here and there to like confirm something during that time. Um, because especially for us, it happens. So it's every day. Like I
Mm.
probably spend 6 hours a day actively with them. I know a lot of dads might not be able to do that. So if you only get an hour with your kid between school and going to bed, make that time extremely special.
Mm.
If you do have a surplus of time, I think it's your responsibility to ensure that things are still operating on the business side. That things are still growing. They're doing what it needs to and checking in even momentarily. We don't want to be living on our phones there, but I think it's that quantity versus quality question. And like my schedule right now essentially says there's a lot of my daily activities shows that there's a lot of room for me to go be doing other things. There's a lot more time. So that dad guilt that we have, I think largely it's invented. No one is actually projecting that on us. And I think if we're always in the pursuit of spending that quality time with them, not flippantly, but like intentionally, like even with whatever you've got, 30 minutes, an hour you can spend with them every day, to make that count.
Yeah. Dude, I'll tell you a story, man. Once I got out of the military, I started working in corporate America, right? Just climbing the ladder. And that's all I ever knew. And so I would leave my house at about 4:30 in the morning. And I would get home in the evening about 7:30. And I would give my kids a bath and I'd put them down to sleep. And that was it. That's all I knew. Um, and when COVID happened, that was just a huge disruption, for me, I'm sure everyone listening, in some fashion was a disruptor. But it allowed me to see what I was missing, right?
Mm,
Because I was working from home all of a sudden. And man, I tell you what, dude, like when that happened, I was like, there's no freaking way I am doing this, right? Like I'm missing so much.
mhm.
And so that was really like the catalyst moment for me to be like, sovereignty, freedom, right? Like want to go down this route so that I can do that and spend more time with the family. But I will tell you, right, those 30 minutes I had was extremely intentional, was extremely present. I'm not checking my phone and stuff like that, right? Which was just and like not everybody is going to have the same amount of time, like you're talking about, right? We have constraints. But when you do have that time, the biggest needle mover that I have found and what we help guys with is to try to dispel this concept of balance.
Mm.
And balance to me is bullshit. If we're being honest, right? Because they've done, I don't know how many countless studies, right? That we can only concentrate on one thing at a time effectively.
Yeah.
We
Us
really,
guys, especially women,
yeah.
they're more talented than we are, but us for sure.
And so if we say, cool, I'm gonna be present with my kids, but I'm flipping open my email, or like, all right, let me send this text real quick. And while you're still kind of watching, like you can't do that, right? Like you can't balance the two. And so what we try to help guys with, and like I said, it's helped me tremendously, is like, hey, when I'm done with work, it may only be a 20-minute block of time that I have until I need to go do the next thing, right? But that 20-minute block of time, that is with my children present, intentional with them, right? Like phone is in a drawer in the other
Mhm.
room. Like I am fully present with them because your kids can tell, like if you're actually there for them. Like you may be there physically, but they can tell if you're not engaged and not present. And what do you think that's telling your child, right? That hey,
Mm,
my work is more important than you are, is what it's
mm,
telling them. So like even if you have 20 minutes, like don't try to balance it. Like be present, be intentional, be focused with them. And I think what you'll often find too is with children, they need a lot less than we think they do,
mm.
right? Is that we kind of had this constant remind that like I need to spend the next 4 hours with my kid, right? And like, be with them for
Right,
forever.
right.
But what I found is like, hey, you spend 20 minutes like with your kid, like fully present, they're good. Like they got what they need from dad, they got that
Yeah.
time and they want to go do something else. So I think this concept of balance is just something I struggle with because if we are there and we're present and intentional and not trying to balance things, I think it's just so much better for
Mm.
that relationship.
My 5-year-old always asks me, when I'm taking a lunch break or something, it's like, Dad, can we go play chess? Right. And so I can tell their need for either attention or connection of some type based on them asking to do things with me.
Mm,
And I'm very conscious of watching how I respond to that when they say,
yep.
"Hey, can we go play chess?"
Hmm.
I immediately say, I might be working or something, and he'll, pop in and say, "Dad, can we go play chess?" I'll take a second and realize what is my time. What am I going to be most grateful at my end of my life about my response to that question? Right.
Yeah.
You can't always interrupt work to go play chess with your kid, but like, especially if they're asking repeatedly and you're having to say no more than 2 or 3 times in a row, something's off. Um, Either in your schedule, in your priorities, because eventually your kids are going to stop asking. Like
Yep.
there's going to be a
Hmm.
time. In fact, it's probably bad parenting, but I'm I'm prepping them for the day when they are teenagers, and I know that they're probably going to hate my guts to a certain extent. Like that's what teenagers do. They get hormonal, they get crazy, they get weird, and they kind of rebel from parents. Almost every teenager does it. So I'm conscious of that time happening and saying like, there's going to be a point in time where there's no more fingerprints on the window. There's no more trash being left all over. There's no Legos to step on. Right. And it's like, maybe in this moment now it's not even an inconvenience. It's just it's a different way to spend your time and focus. And so I
Mm,
think, yeah, when, especially if they ask me repeatedly to go do something, and if I have to say no more than 3 times, I've got a priority issue, right?
mm,
It's the
mm,
same as because if a team member of mine asks me 3 times for something and I don't give it to them, that's bad leadership. Just
mm,
like saying no to your kid when they are repeatedly asking for connection, that's that's bad leadership too, right? You're
mm,
not showing up in a way that we would encourage them to treat their kids,
mm.
right?
Yeah. No, I love that. And that brings me back literally to this morning. So my middle daughter, she has like ADHD. She's very obsessive but she is like the most creative, like smart little girl in the world. This morning I was making breakfast and doing all the dad stuff routine, right? Like making breakfast, packing lunches, getting all the stuff laid out and squared away for school. And she's like, "Hey, Dad, can you play with me?" And I'm like, "Hey, baby, I'm like cooking breakfast right now. Give me a second." She's like, "Can you play with me?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm doing all that stuff for school right now." And so it just brings me back to that, right? Like maybe I didn't respond in the best way of like to her needs, right? And so it just brings that awareness to it. And
Mm.
so fail on me this morning, right? It makes me think about, okay, all right, something going on.
Well, but
Um,
even I would, I know you're not really beating yourself up more than giving a anecdotal example here, but like to really what they're searching for when they're asking for that kind of attention. Can you play with me? They're looking for connection deeply.
mm,
Their soul is screaming out for connection. So what you do isn't more important than just doing. So it's like,
mm.
if we're very busy, how do we bring them into our world so that we
Yeah,
do have
that,
that
that was my,
connection
yeah, that was
at
my
the same
thought.
time?
So
Stir
yeah, so
the
she
eggs, go do this
exactly,
thing.
and that's what I did exactly. I had her come help me.
And then
Um,
that fills that bucket, right?
mhm,
And like they're,
yeah,
because that's all they want. They don't really want it. They don't care about Barbie, right? They care
yeah,
about dad. They want to like
yeah.
be involved in that way.
Yeah. And one tip too that has been super beneficial, not just for the relationship with my kids when I'm busy, but also the relationship with my wife when I'm really busy too. is, again, we talked about the concept of balance, right? And for men, it's almost impossible to concentrate on two things at once, right? If my wife's talking to me and I'm answering an email. I'm not listening, you know?
Right. Right.
So is just getting out front of that communication. And so you can take the same approach with your wife, take the same approach with your coworkers, with your kids, but it is being upfront and clear about the communication of where your priority is right now. Doesn't mean they're not a priority, right? It just means that like my priority right at this second is on this. And so if I'm doing something in business, right, and I'm answering an email or something on the phone, and my wife had starting to have a conversation with me, like rather than trying to balance both of those
Mm,
and her feeling like she's being ignored, I would just say, hey, babe, hey, I'm answering this email. It's going to take about 2 minutes, okay, and then I'm going to give you my full attention. And so just kind of
mhm.
getting out in front of that, right? So it sets that expectation of like, okay, cool, he's doing something, I got it. But I also, she acknowledges that I do want to, make her priority, and I
Mm.
will, but I'm going to focus on one thing at a time. So I'm not being disrespectful and not listening to you, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. And I think really what wives want, they don't want our attention all the time. They don't actually want that. I think there's some needy types of people, but them being excluded, our wives don't want our attention all the time. They want our attention when we're present, to be
Mm-hmm.
present when we're present.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think, and that's something I'm working on too, is that if I'm around them, if I'm around like the kids or family, or we're doing a meal or whatever, to not be interacting with anyone else at that time. I went to dinner with someone recently, and they had their cell phone out like on the table, and I was like, we're tight, like we're really good. And so like I'm not super offended, but I'm also like, I don't feel that important. I feel like anyone could call right now and you would take that phone
Mm-hmm.
call. Where like for me, I intentionally keep my phone in my pocket or away. Like go
Mm-hmm.
turn it off. Give yourself permission to say when I'm in this bucket, especially because I think most guys, I'll only speak for myself, but probably most guys are only able to focus on one thing at a time. You cannot split your focus in any type of
Mm-hmm.
qualitative way. So
Yeah.
yeah, separate the two worlds. And if you do need a break, say like, hey, I'm going to go handle this for 10 minutes. I'm going to be right back. And then leave your phone in that room when you come back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been a big needle mover for me too, on not trying to balance and be singularly focused in work as well. Um, so I have a bad habit of trying to do, a million things at once, right? Even though we just talked about we can't really split our attention. I do it. And so at work, I have started setting up kind of time boxes, right? Of like very strict rules around that time box that I have of like, this is the intention of the task I'm working on,
Mm,
and nothing else exists at this moment, right? And
mm.
so, phone goes on do not disturb. I just have some white static noise going, and I set that timer. I've got a little like circle timer right here. I set that for like 30 minutes.
Is it this one?
Um, yeah, man, look at that. Oh,
We got the exact same one.
we're timer buddies.
The good old Pomodoro. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll set it for 30 minutes, right? And I'm like, hey, cool. That is what I'm working on. And like, yeah, there's a million things going on in the business, but like to focus on the needle mover task, I need to get done. I need to just remove all distractions.
Yeah. Also, a total side note, like if people are asking, what is this one? Uh,
Yeah.
go buy a better one than this. I saw a Facebook ad and I got hit with it. I was like, I'm gonna go.
What brand do you have?
Oh, I
We don't
don't know. I
want
think it's a Chinese piece of
to
crap.
trash talk some brands here.
But it's like it looks so legit. It looks like one of those like
It does. It looks really
Google
good.
Nest kind of things.
Yeah. Is
No,
yours like LED like
yeah,
mine?
it's
Yeah.
plasticky and cheap and
Yeah. I don't know.
anyway.
Mine's decent. I'll tell you the brand because I like mine. It's Avinia, Avinia. I just got it on Amazon for like 15
Yeah,
bucks or something.
right.
I'm sure it's on, yeah, just cheap Chinese one. But
Yeah.
my kids use it too. And my middle daughter, who I said is ADHD and OCD, loves this thing. It's so
Mm,
funny to see the difference between like my two girls. So like we'll go tell them to brush their teeth, right? And like the oldest one's super distracted. She like, blah blah blah. She like checks out a book on the way up there, and like she just takes forever to like actually go brush her teeth. And then my youngest daughter, my middle child, will be like, "Hey, Dad, can you set that timer for me so I
yes.
know exactly how much to do it?" And she'll like bring the timer up there and be like, 1 minute on the dot, And then yeah, she's like super into it.
Another great resource. There's this YouTube channel called Danny Go. If you have young kids, especially Danny
Yeah,
Go.
I'm write it down.
We're pretty big fans of like clean stuff that's not like insanely hypey and like just gonna trigger their sugar receptors or something. But he's got this song all about like cleaning up. And it's almost like back in our day, it was Barney. Like if you remember growing up,
Yeah.
and it was the Barney cleanup song. It's like a modern version of that, but it makes it really fun, and like the music speeds up each time. But you I've not found a single other way to get kids to clean for 5 minutes straight. And they are running to put stuff away versus like turning it into like a fun game that they can interact with. So my
Yeah.
wife, she wants the room clean, turn on that Danny Go song,
I'm
and
gonna have to
they,
do that for sure.
yes, it's
Something different than Miss Rachel. Oh my God, man.
yeah.
Have
Well,
you done that? That is, oh,
we've never done the Miss Rachel stuff, and I know there's a lot
oh,
of spin-offs like that. There's like the
yeah.
Coco Melon stuff, and I
Oh
think there's
yeah.
even studies coming out about the damage that some of those like just it's like sugar. It's visual sugar,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just gets them hyped up. And when you turn it off, they detract from it. And so
Yeah.
we try to keep things a little bit more mellow and keep screen time as
Oh
much to a
yeah.
minimum as we can.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like, my wife and I are not perfect parents by any stretch of the imagination, right? I mean, we mess up every single day. But we had this moment last weekend. We kind of looked at each other and we're like, we're doing something right. We had a rainy day down here in Georgia where I'm at, and like we couldn't go outside. We're a big outside family. Like most of the time we're gonna spend outside. And they couldn't, so they had to be inside. And my two girls probably played for 6 hours together, just building a fort, doing all kinds of, just fun activities inside. And like we'd never watched a screen once. Like they never
Mm,
asked for a screen once, and it's like, and that's just because that's what we reinforce at the house. It's like we don't really do tablets or anything like that. And so it was kind of cool to see them, their creativity come out, that time period, be like, okay, cool. Like we're doing okay.
yeah, yeah. That is a gift when they can enjoy something that's not electronic, you know. And by the way, I am not anti-screen like 100%. Like I think there are times you just need them, you need a minute. So it's like we another YouTube channel we love is the Outdoor Boys, because we have, three young boys, and they go out camping in these crazy insane conditions. But it's this guy who goes and travels with even a 2-year-old. He'll bring with him to negative 60-degree temperatures, and camps outside in Alaska with them. And it's like it's super cool to see. So we try to think like how can they learn or be educated, or especially because my wife homeschooling, she's doing a lot of the outdoor type of education. So
Mhm.
very much about like play oriented
Yep.
education, a
Mhm.
lot of nature studies, and a lot of like real life application. Like I wouldn't be shocked because of that our kids become entrepreneurs, honestly,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
even being confined to, we're not going to train them to be confined by a job by leaving them confined even to, in our case, into school, right? So
Mhm.
like, or daycare or whatever that is.
Mhm.
We want them to think visionary, think problem solving, think, how do I not just like the micro details, but how do I architect a plan for my life and for my legacy?
Yeah. So I want to talk about that. Because I think you and I are probably, in line with a lot of values and see the way culture is going, right? And I'd love to kind of get your perspective on the homeschooling thing too.
Mm,
And so so we are marching down the path towards homeschooling. Again, this is my first month, being full time work from home. So we're not quite there yet, right? But that's the goal and the path for us is to get to a point where we can do that. Because I have some very strong reservations about the current school system. And I'll preface this by saying that it's not a problem with the teachers or
yes,
or
correct.
administration, right? It is a problem with the system. And so there's been all kinds of studies, and I'm not sure if you know Matt Bodro, who runs
Mm,
the Apogee program. I'll shoot you over his handle. Definitely check him out. But I had him on the show, and I mean, totally enlightened me on the school system process and kind of how it was developed, right? And really, what is the intention behind it? And it is to do just that, right? Is to get kids to stay still, is to get kids to listen to directions, follow directions, and set them up ultimately to be a productive member of a working capitalist society, right? So they can go
mhm,
get a job, they can pay taxes, and not think for themselves. And like I said, this is not saying anything negative about the teachers at all. It is about the ultimate system. And like I have young kids, like similar to you. And there's been all kinds of research studies that have come out about the positive benefits of play. Of kind of having this your like core competencies be around play for children, like up into almost when they're like 12 or 13. And then that's when you start, like actual academics, right? Like up
Mhm.
until that point, it is being creative, it is learning through play, it is giving kids an opportunity to be a leader, and really just teaching them like those life skills, those soft skills, right? And then once they reach that kind of adolescent age is when we really start academics and start making sure we have testing down. And obviously there's things around that, right? Like you wanted to be able to read, so we're gonna do reading and like the basic stuff, but there's just such positive benefits around play.
Boy, it's again, I'm 100% with you. My mom was even a teacher and was into the education system for a long time. So teachers are not the enemy, administration's not the enemy. But the model of education that exists now that has not been iterated on since the Industrial Revolution is that, what was it Rockefeller said? We don't want a nation of thinkers, we want a nation of doers.
Mhm.
So that is invented to create the 9 to 5 mindset in you. And embracing the homeschool thought process is not, it's not a like a bridge to say that we think we can do it better. We're
Mhm.
saying we think we can do it differently. And we think
Mhm.
that the outcomes support that and can create an empowered child versus a subservient child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just don't want that. We also, I, you know, I'm cautious of what I say publicly because some things should just stay in my head. But just like even like the types of other kids that are in many public school systems and the kind of the just the agenda that's being embraced and accepted. I just don't want my kids interacting with that and being
Yep.
forced to adhere to that level of decision making, right?
Yeah, and we can go into whatever detail you want to on that. This show is an open forum, so whatever you're
Yeah,
comfortable with.
sure.
But I'll just kind of speak my mind, frankly. It feels like regardless of what political class you fall under, right? I feel like there is an essential effort, to create these kind of servant type people, right? For us to not be able to think for ourselves, to ultimately be able to fall into a system, and a lot of the values around that culture, like we just don't agree with,
Mm,
right? And it's going to be indoctrinated, right? When you send your kid to a public school system, or it could be a private school system, again, it's not the teachers, it is the system, that is coming down. Is like you don't have control over that, right? You are indoctrinating, your kids are being indoctrinated into that system. And so, one thing that I have tried to do, and we try to do at my house since our kids are in the school system still, is we have to do a good job of unschooling them
mm,
when they get home. And that's kind of the term I like to use, is unschooling them. And so, perfect example of this is my middle daughter's in kindergarten. And I already mentioned she's very creative. She loves art, music, things like that. And so she's in a music class right now, which I was really excited about. I'm like, cool, they'll do some music, they'll have fun, and she'll learn a little bit. And we were just having a conversation, after school one day, or it might have been on the way to school. And she was saying she was really excited about music class today. And I was like, oh, great. Like, I'm awesome. Austin, you're excited about class. I was like, what are you excited about? She's like, well, I'm excited to get tickets, Daddy. And I was like, okay. I was like, what are tickets? She's like, well, we get those if we're good. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what do you have to do to be good? And she's like, well, we have to listen to directions. We have to be quiet. We have to sit still, and I was just like, what the heck is going on
mm,
here? I'm
mm,
like, you're supposed to teach my kid music, right? Like you were indoctrinating them that they need to sit down, shut up, and they'll get tickets, right? And like and they'll follow direction to get tickets. And so like I had to unschool her like in the moment. Like I almost just like went into school, but I had to like refrain myself.
yeah.
But I was like, hey, listen. I said, hey, in the real world, when you grow up, I was like, nobody, you're not going to get tickets for being good. Is what I told her. I was like, it's great to be good. You want to be good, right? And be kind to people. I was like, but what you get tickets for is solving people's problems and providing value to people. I was like, that's what gets you tickets, right? So if you have a friend that needs something and you give it to them, like then you might get a ticket. And so like trying to like unschool her in that thought
Mm,
process, because it's just it gets ingrained in them so early, right? Of like,
mm,
hey, if I sit down, if I shut up, if I do what I'm told, then I'll get a good grade and I'll get a ticket, so to speak. And so like I feel like even if our kids are in a school system and that's our only option and we can't homeschool, is then we need to do our job, our part of not being ignorant to what's going on at school. And we need to indoctrinate them into our values and our culture as a parent.
mm. I think homeschooling is, for clarity, 100% a privilege to do. It is like It's a blessing. The ability to do it. Not everyone gets to do it. So it's absolutely not a right. It's a privilege. But I think what a lot of parents, they think that they aren't prepped and ready to go. It's like that identity piece, right? It's like
Mm,
they aren't homeschooling yet because they feel inadequate, or they feel like they don't know what's the perfect curriculum, what's like the
mhm.
right path, how do I structure the day, how do we financially balance with maybe just one primary income, and those types of things. And my response to that, in fact, my wife last night just did this big, for people interested in homeschooling, breaking down how you can literally get started for free with library books. And you don't have to buy expensive curriculum, but even if you do, that curriculum is not it's not a lot comparative to,
Mhm.
I mean, the outcome that you get. But I think the ultimate question to ask is, do you believe, I'm not asking you, but it's the hypothetical. And talk to your spouse about this too if you're really interested. Do you believe that you are generally a good person, generally well-rounded? You have values, you have vision, you have morals. You know, you're not a crack dealer, right? If you believe that to be true, you have, I believe, a moral responsibility to get them out of that school system as soon as humanly possible, because they are going to become just like the environment that they're in.
Mm.
So if you believe that you're generally not perfect, but a good parent, them doing 1 or 2 hours of, like the regular math, reading, writing kind of stuff a day, and the rest, they're going to follow by play and by absorption. So them being out in nature and figuring things out, and they step on a twig and they gotta, they get a thorn. They're like, okay, I learned not to do that anymore, right? Or like how to deal with it medically. How do I bandage myself? It's like all these things that they learn through experiences. But I think really for anyone who, even if you're an 80% good parent, it is your job to get them into an environment where those are the virtues and the values being instilled in them. Otherwise, they are going to represent the average of the school kids that they are around.
Mm.
And there is angst, there is, oh boy, violence, there's gender confusion, there is value confusion, there is the church versus state issues. There's like all these things that you cannot address to them or with them when they are in that environment. You
Mm.
can't, and you have no control. So that's what leads us to like need to unschool. And by the way, I was homeschooled. I did public school. I've been in charter schools. I've been in private. I've pretty much experienced the whole swash of possible education options. And homeschool, if your goal is to instill virtue into your kids and values that you believe is the best path for them, for me, I'll tell you, I learned way more dangerous, vile, horrible stuff by being in the school system than I ever would have in homeschool. And like it will lead inevitably some people to believe that homeschool kids are sheltered or whatever. No, dude, they're some of the most well-rounded social. You're in communities, you're in groups. You go out to like events and field trips, and you do all these things. It's just a different way of thinking through that. And I would encourage anyone, if the seed has already been planted in you, to eventually get to the homeschooling state and figuring that out, starting that as soon as humanly possible, even imperfectly, with
Mm.
like, hey, for 30 minutes, we're going to go on Duolingo and learn Spanish, right? Whatever that is. We're going to just start there and then see what the feedback is. And you're going to find that kids not only feel, based on our previous conversation, they're going to feel more connected to you. They're going to be learning like how to learn,
Mhm.
not learning how to regurgitate. They need to learn how
Yeah.
to learn.
Not learning how to memorize.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I'm a huge proponent. It is a privilege, but I think it's a privilege worth fighting for.
Yeah, I love that, man. Last thing I want to get from you, Jordan, is you mentioned that, right? With homeschooling, it is you have the opportunity to, instill those values in your kids, right? That are important to you and your family. So like for you guys, like what are those values? Like at the end of the day, when you are 80 and you're looking back and you have no regrets, right? Is how did you raise those kids and what values did you raise them on?
A lot of my personal beliefs are rooted in scripture. So, um, I know the Bible says a lot of things that people disagree with and other things they may agree with, and whatnot. And so I think everyone needs to decide their own spiritual journey, on their own. But our beliefs are very rooted in the fundamental elements of scripture. And so, I think in terms of like virtues, what do we want them to learn? For us, it's the fruit of the spirits: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Learning those things makes you a very well-rounded human being. And there's a lot of wisdom in scripture, whether you worship God or not. Read the Bible, and you're gonna get a guidebook, especially the teachings of Jesus. You're gonna learn how to love other people, and how to be value oriented, and how to even have righteous indignation about things. That if there's something happening, you can stand up against evil and for good, and to identify those things, but also to be an example to others of how to be a giver, how to care for others, how to not bully. You know what? Here's one interesting little caveat. Have you ever heard of a homeschool bully? Anyone
No,
homeschooled who
I
does?
don't think I
I
have.
I haven't either. Like kids are kids, right? So they're going to be D-bags here and there, but that is an invention of a model of like overcrowding, angst, regurgitation of facts, forcing them to do things that are not natural to a childlike brain, right? And so yeah, I obviously I'm a huge proponent of that, and so we choose to homeschool kind of based on a lot of those biblical principles. We use a lot of secular curriculum and those types of pieces, but everything is rooted in kind of that construct.
Yeah, I love that, man. Well, Jordan, thank you for coming on, man.
This has been my pleasure. This was really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, a little bit different than just a business discussion, which I think business ultimately drives towards what we ultimately want, which is family. So
Yes, absolutely.
yeah. Well, awesome, man. Well, guys, that's it. Hey, if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, drop down, leave us a review, give us a like. It's going to help this message reach a broader audience, which if you guys have been listening for a while, you know that my goal with this is to change the culture by creating more epic dads, right? And so we need this message to spread like wildfire. And the only way that happens is with your help. So leave us a quick review and rating, and then share this show with one other dad in your network is my other ask, because you never know, what is weighing heavy on the heart of a dad, that they're not talking about, right? And this show, this episode with Jordo might be the one that caused them to take action and change their life, and not only their life, but their children's life and their children's life. So do those two things: is leave us a review and share this with somebody in your network. So Jordo, thank you again for coming on, man, and look forward to connecting soon.
You rock, man. Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the show and supporting our mission to change the culture by creating more epic dads. If this message resonates with you and you are ready to start becoming the husband, father, and man that you were called to be, I'd like to invite you to do two things. The first is to join our free online community called the Epic Dad Crew. Inside the crew, you will get access to resources, workout programs, courses, community, everything you need to start leveling up as a dad. We are not meant to be lone wolves. We are meant to be part of a tribe, surrounded by men that will challenge us and hold us accountable to living as our best selves. So hit the link in the description of this episode and join the Epic Dad Crew today. And if you are ready to accelerate your results and create massive change in your life, I'd like to invite you to join our 90-day Epic Dad Accelerator. Our goal with the accelerator is to help you create an unshakable foundation as a husband and a father, build unstoppable discipline and habits, get into incredible shape with a custom workout and nutrition plan, and provide massive accountability to becoming the type of man you want to become. If you are ready to radically change your life as a father in just 90 days, hit the link in the description of the show to learn more and see if the accelerator is a good fit for you. Thanks for listening. Now go be epic.